it was simultaneous and then and the other one helped the other, and it built upon that. And that's how it's always been for me. So I was a single mother, started modeling at the same time because they were scouting me while I was pregnant. And then I got modeling, then I was modeling and acting.
Welcome back to Meet Bridget, a show that sheds light on the often untold teenage and young adult stories of successful women from all types of backgrounds and in all sorts of careers. This show is an extension of our confidence coaching service for young women. I'm Keshiia, and I co-host this show alongside my best friend and Bridget founder, Asha Gabriel. We are currently on season 4 of Meet Bridget, and today I have the honor of welcoming somebody very special to our show. Joanna Garel, also known endearingly as Auntie Jo to me, or Tita, is an actress, a mother, a director, a producer, an artist, and now the founder and owner of Garel Fine Art in Manhattan Beach, California. Garel got an early start as a teen mom, first finding success as a model and actress in Toronto, then Hollywood, and then she got married to Matthew Garel, who I can also attest to this is actually the nicest husband in the entire world. She's a photographer, producer, director who just directed a soon-to-be-released award-winning short film based on a true story about her brother's struggle with mental illness. And today, on top of everything else, she also collects fine art and has embraced her own journey as an artist and is now a new gallery owner. Her journey is as vibrant as she is, and she's done it all while raising 3 children and always finding a way to lean into her creativity, her humor, and uplift her community. So welcome, Auntie Jo. I'm really excited to bring you onto the show, and thank you for taking the time to do this with me.
Wow, thank you for the intro. I'm looking forward to it. I'm honored.
So I have to share with our audience what I shared with you. This is the first time I'm really getting butterflies because you're really somebody that I've always looked up to, and you have always approached life with such grace and humor. And so I'm very excited to get into all of the nitty gritty and the backstory and just how you are the woman that you are today. So let's start with where you're from and where you grew up.
I was born in the Philippines and I moved to Toronto, Canada with my family when I was 8 years old. And that's where I became a Canadian citizen and was really acclimating to the new environment and culture of the Philippines. I mean, of Canada. And it was my first experience of bullying.
I want to get into all of it because this is actually, I'm realizing, in 4 seasons and over 100 guests. So this is the first time that we are, I'm pretty sure, interviewing somebody who's emigrated to the United States or to Canada and had to undergo naturalization. I believe that's still the same process in Canada. And so I'm curious to know what your experience with that was and how you felt at that time. And then I would love to hear about your experience with bullying because it's terrible.
So I came from I came from a privileged background in the Philippines. So I went to a private girls' school with uniforms and run by nuns. So it was the opposite of how you would normally think. The Philippines, because the Philippines is a third world country, but there is a very distinct hierarchy. So you're either really, really poor or you're doing really well. And I was fortunate enough to be, we were pretty affluent in the Philippines. We were, so I had excellent schooling, great education, great manners and everything. And as soon as we moved to the Philippines, my parents were immigrants. So the peso doesn't translate to Canadian dollars. So we moved into a working class neighborhood and primarily made up of working Italian and Portuguese. And this is just the demographic of that area. And so then you put a brown Filipina, with a dark tan into that midst. And I really underwent severe bullying. It was to the point where I couldn't even, I was called every name in the book, every racial slur, because I was the only Filipina in this primarily white neighborhood, European. And it was so bad that I couldn't even play during recess without having to hold the monitor's hand, because otherwise I would just get beaten up. So that was
Oh my
so
God.
I remember thinking, I was like, wow, these Canadians are really savage. Because I couldn't believe.
And you
I was
normally
like,
hear the exact opposite.
yeah. And I thought, wait, I'm the brown one, and they're calling me a savage, but they're really savage here, not knowing that,
Oh my God.
that there's different types of neighborhoods. So I didn't know that my parents brought me to a not so good neighborhood where people were very violent and ignorant.
Yeah, yeah.
Not all, just
Oh
a
my.
particular neighborhood.
Did you get to the point where you started to make friends and you started to learn the language a little bit more? Did you know English emigrating to the United States or to Canada? I'm sorry.
Yes, because in the Philippines, you're actually taught English in schools. So I knew how to
Mhm.
speak English perfectly, but I just had an accent. So they made fun of that too.
Mhm.
And what happened was in the beginning, I was cowering, and I was really afraid and fearful every single day. And unfortunately, I reached my breaking point when one day I was at the desk, and this girl in my class poured a whole, back then you would have like bottles of white glue that you would, for crafts, and she literally poured the whole
Mhm. Mhm.
bottle on my head in class. And now looking back, I realized that she was in special ed. So I didn't know that at that time. I just thought, even, everybody was just bullying me to the point, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and that actually made me very violent in the end, because after
Oh
that,
my God.
if you looked at me the wrong way, if you talked to me the wrong way, I was just going to start punching. Like, it wasn't even, and I didn't care if you could beat me up. It was just going to be, and so I could see
You would,
why the breaking point for bullying happens, but in worse conditions here in the States. This
yeah.
is in Canada. So that's what happened to me. So
Yeah.
I was really defensive for a long time after that.
Wow. Did you have a hard time making friends because of this, or did you get to a point like in middle school or high school where you started to transition to having like a more open relationships with girls who are actually nice?
Right. I actually, even though I was getting bullied, I did make two good friends. And they're still my friends to this day from fourth grade. So, yes, I was able to make friends. I've always been pretty social, but they just couldn't get past the color of my skin, except for two of my friends. And I
Hmm.
remember they were the ones who read a lot of books because we were both bookworms. So at that
Yeah.
time, I'm like, well, the ones who read books are the ones who don't beat me up. So I really
Yeah,
didn't understand. I was 8 years old, so I didn't know about education and how that would affect, people's outlooks on life and their experience. Um, but looking
absolutely.
back, I did make a couple of good friends, and then from that particular neighborhood, I moved to another neighborhood, which was a better neighborhood now. But at that point, as soon as I got off the bus, I already had a chip on my shoulder because I thought, oh, so
Hmm.
now I went to a primarily Jamaican neighborhood. So it was all, so we were all, they were darker, but now it was
Hmm.
Jamaican. And so I was like, okay, and then one of them, as soon as I got off the airplane, I mean, as soon as I got off the bus, he started bullying me. And we're good friends to this day. But the first thing that I did was he punched me in the solar plexus because I tried to kick him because he was such a, and then he ran away, and I tried to hit his head with a rock. But we got over
Ugh,
that, and then everybody realized, oh, okay, then you can't really push her
you
around,
can't
and
really
then we
mess
all
with her.
became, yeah, no, because I had a chip on my shoulder. I had, because from the other,
Yeah, I mean,
uh,
it's like we're
yeah.
at the end of the day, we're just animals, and especially kids, you're learning these behaviors and you're learning how to defend yourself. I can totally see it.
I thought everybody in
Yeah.
Canada were savages, so I figured, oh, okay, so this is just a different type of people that are going to act like this towards me. So then they did try, but then in the end they were like, oh, okay, so she's fine. She can handle herself. So then we all became friends. So nobody bullied me in the new school.
What were your interests like at the time? Like, because you're trying to just be a student and just be a young girl. What were things that you were interested in at the time? Like, did you have hobbies? Did you hang out
Oh
with
yeah,
your brother? You have a couple siblings, right?
I do. I have two younger brothers. They're 7 and 4 years younger than me. And my dad was a very active person. So we skied, we did track. So we were very involved. Track and field meets, played football, you know, tackle football, flag football. I was the quarterback. So I really had a lot of fun in the second neighborhood because everybody was
Yeah.
athletic. We all played volleyball. We rode our bikes. So it was a really good, amazing childhood from from that aspect.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to be outdoors and just actually live and be a kid. Did you have any idea of where you would end up in life? Like, what did you see in your environment around you in terms of like what your parents did for work, and how did that create different aspirations in you? Like, did you already know that you wanted to do creative things? Did you know you wanted to one day become an actress? Because I know you as being very outgoing. I would have never guessed that you've been bullied, but these patterns make sense. But what did you see yourself doing and liking at that time?
The bullying, I think, taught me to stand up for myself, which
Mm-hmm.
informed how I approached life thereafter, which is why when I got
Mm-hmm.
to the new neighborhood, so I was that kind of person now, even to this day, that I'm nice to you, but do not cross me because I will stand up for myself. I'm not gonna
Mm-hmm.
go crazy. But so from there, my mom was a doctor, or she's retired now, and my dad was an engineer. And I just said I wanted to become a doctor like my mother because I
Mm-hmm.
felt that, she's smart and everybody respects her. The respect thing was a big thing for me. And there was, at that age, it's like the element of prestige. I was like, okay, I want to be a doctor like my mom because, she was a good example. So that's what I wanted to be from that age.
At what point did you kind of realize that that's not what you wanted to do? Like how did life kind of play out for you at this, after the second school and this stage you fell into a rhythm with your friends and everything, and you had this idea that you wanted to be a doctor in your head. So,
We moved there to the new neighborhood in, I think, fourth grade. And I
mhm,
aspired to be a doctor and was always trying to do well in school up until I was in high school. And that's when, actually, shortly after we moved to that, it started derailing because my parents, new immigrants, the pressures of, you know, also not having very much emotional intelligence, they had a really tumultuous marriage. And so
mhm,
that created another stressor. So where I left the bullying, now I came into this home life, which was very tumultuous and violent. So my parents were, they unfortunately they went to the stage where they were just physically abusive towards each other, not just one to the other, but to each other. So
mhm,
that just, so I felt unsafe at school, and then I was feeling safe, and then now I felt unsafe at home. And so I still wanted to be a doctor, but I started not liking school or studying, and I just started going on to like self-destructive mode,
mhm.
because I think I was just acting out at that time. So when did it change? When I got pregnant in my last year of high school while going to a private Catholic girls' school run by nuns wearing uniform. That's when it changed.
Well, I mean, it's hard because you think about the environment that you are up against, right? And so you are trying to navigate what is already a difficult time for anybody. I think being a teen, having hormones raging, trying to figure out who you are, it's really a confusing time. So pile on top of that a tumultuous home life when you felt like things were, you were already moved to this new neighborhood and were like getting a handle on everything else. Did you find any comfort in anything, like any creative aspects, or did you and your brother lean on each other? You and your brothers, sorry.
No, I couldn't really lean on anyone because my brothers were so young that I remember my
Mhm.
parents would be fighting and I would hear them. And I'd look at my brothers and I'm like, look at these people. They're just so young. They're just sleeping. And I'm here getting a stomach ache. But so no, I just had to shove that thing and just the whole bottle that thing inside because I didn't know that you could talk to someone. I was just like,
Yeah,
okay, well, I guess it's one of those things I got to deal with. So
yeah.
I think it also contributed to my extreme hyper independence now. Like I don't like
Mm-hmm.
to rely on anyone and I'm not saying that's a good thing. I think it's too hyper
Mm-hmm.
independent. So until I met Matt, of course. So even to this day, I don't like to rely on anyone. I don't want to need anyone because I thought that people weren't at that time. Nobody was reliable. You could count on anyone. So I became hyper independent.
Did your parents put you in Catholic school because they felt like they needed to rein you back in, or was this just something that they had wanted for their kids? Like they were just wanted private school for their children?
In Canada, Catholic schools were, are really good schools, and so,
Mm-hmm.
being a doctor and an engineer, they wanted to make sure that we had top notch education. That was
Mm-hmm.
always important as, Filipinos and Asian culture. So we always went the Catholic school route. They didn't have to, actually, I was even though I was going through this tumultuous thing at home, my mom always said to me, "You were such a good kid that you never gave me any problems until I hit 18." So I was actually a really good student. So no, I was 16 until I was 16. She says I was really great, and then 16, and then everything just derailed. And she was like, "What happened? Where did this come from?" Because that's when I really went off the rails when
Really?
I was 16. Yeah. I feel like anything before 21, all bets are off because you're so young. You don't know anything. You're stupid. So I'm not ashamed of it anymore. And I
Mhm.
can talk about it because, it is what it is. And I didn't know any better. So for anybody who's 21 and over, forgive yourself. You're just too young. Be kind to yourself. You're allowed to people make big mistakes for all their lives. So I derailed by shoplifting, skipping school, doing vandalism, getting into fights. I was just that girl, the girl that my parents, no, my friends' parents would say, do not hang out with her because she's a bad influence. So I was that girl.
Mhm.
I would, instead of going to school, I'd say, "Oh, why don't we go and let's skip and let's go shoplift?" And then it was not. I was very self-destructive at that point.
Mhm.
And then I got pregnant in my last year of high school, and so I barely graduated high school. I think they just gave me a pass just to get me to the next level, like just get her out of here so we don't hold her back because she's got this new baby that she's got to take care of. So yeah, so from 16 to 18, I put my parents through the ringer. I'm sorry, mom and dad. But they did their best. You know, they had a lot to deal with as well. So they were also growing up. They were young parents, so I don't blame them
Yeah.
or begrudge them for how I was brought up. They were also really young and immature. So I understand now.
I can't imagine moving to a completely different country in order to make a new life for you and your family. I mean, our listeners know that I have an 18-month-old son, and just the thought of picking up everything and moving away from your entire community to start over, it's not for the faint of heart. So, I mean, I can really appreciate everything that your parents went through and you and your
Yes.
brothers, just to start a new life. I feel the same way about my grandparents and my parents. So, you were a bit of a rebel to say it mildly.
I didn't like anyone. I didn't like rules. I didn't like anybody telling me what to do. And if you told me to do something, then I'd want to do the opposite just to see what would happen. And those traits actually served me really well in my next career, in my first career, actually, my first career,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it actually propelled me to do really well because they liked that kind of attitude. But I didn't know that, but
Mhm.
it was perfect for entertainment or modeling
Yeah.
because they liked the rebels.
When you got pregnant, first of all, 16, being pregnant in itself is so hard. It's
Oh
really
no, I
hard,
got
I
pregnant.
think.
Sorry, I got pregnant at 17.
Ah,
Sorry.
so when you got pregnant, what was that like? Like telling your parents and then, realizing that you were going to be a mom?
I was so immature that when I think about it, my poor parents, they had just gone on a 1 month vacation to the Philippines. And as soon as they landed from the airport, the first thing I said to them was, "Mom, welcome back. I love you. And by the way, I crashed the car." And then they said, because it was winter, and they said, "Okay." I go, "But I'm okay." And she said, "Okay, well, that's fine." And then we go home and we get into the door. My grandmother, who was staying with us while they were gone for a month, said, the school called and said that Joanna's been skipping a lot of classes. So we don't know so her grades are suffering. And so that
Yeah.
was, they had just gotten from the airport. Now they walked into the door. So now my mom's just, mad, livid. So she's
Yeah.
there rushing out of the kitchen. And then finally she comes back into her office. And then I'm there doing something. And then she says, "Is there anything else that you need to tell me since you're, you know?" And I said, "Well, there is one more thing." And she said, "What?" And I said, "I'm pregnant."
Oh,
My poor mother, she just looked at me and just walked out the door, said to my dad, "She's pregnant." And then my boyfriend, my husband's father, was there in the living room. I didn't even, because we weren't supposed to tell him that way. But she asked me, so I just said, well,
Yeah.
I might as well just tell you now since, you know, three's the charm. My poor parents.
Oh
What
my
the hell? Yeah. So that's how I told them.
Oh, well, they're saints.
But I wasn't scared or anything. I felt like she was also a pregnant mom out of wedlock, my mother. They had a shotgun wedding.
Mhm.
So if you saw their
Mhm.
wedding pictures, nobody was happy because it was all under duress. so, so I
Oh my
figured, oh, so
goodness.
she knows how I felt. She was like this. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so then she said, well, you guys, you're gonna have to marry him. And I'm like, marry him? I was like, I don't want to marry him. And then I said, okay, I guess we could get married. So that's how immature I was. But then we didn't get married. He
Oh,
says, no, I don't think we should get married. I go, no, we don't want to get married. It was that's how planned out it
yeah.
was.
Oh my goodness.
Hmm.
So, what happens next? So, 9 months go by, and then you have a beautiful new baby.
So this is where, so it was, 16 to 18 was a train wreck. And
Mhm.
interestingly enough, in that time, the modeling industry was changing in Canada. So this was 1988. At that time, they were going away from the blonde, blue eyed Caucasian girls, and they were starting to look for exotic looking women. And
Mhm.
for whatever reason, I failed to mention, I was a tomboy my whole life too. So
Mhm.
I always played with the boys. I was like the quarterback of the football team. Like, and I even talk
Mhm.
like this, like, yeah, it was, I was, yeah. Like I talk like a guy. People actually thought I was a boy. They said, are you a boy or a girl? So while I was pregnant, and even since I turned 16, a lot of people were coming up to me and saying, hey, you should go into modeling. And I was like, modeling? I'm going to be a doctor like my mother. Why would I be a model like that? Because, I'm like, modeling? What the? Who models? Like, I don't want to be a model. Like, I didn't have, nobody ever liked me. Like, guys never liked me. I look like a boy. So that was so not even in my realm of even reality. And so people kept saying that to me from 16 to 18. And then when I got pregnant, my mom got really mad at me and she said, well, you can live at home, but I'm going to cut you off. And so I said, all right. And then at that point, a lot of the agencies now were scouting me. Like, these are people on the streets or in the thing. And I was like, what is wrong with these people? Like, I don't, it was really weird to me. And
Yeah.
so then one of the top agencies in Canada actually found, like, I was just walking and they said, you should go into modeling. Well, I'm 8 months pregnant. So they, oh, well, call me when you're done. I was like, okay.
Really?
So my mom cut me off. I said, you know what? Maybe I'll go to those modeling agencies because I can, I didn't want to go on welfare because you can go on welfare in Canada if you're a
Yeah.
single mom. I said, I don't want to go into
Mhm.
welfare and I don't want to, so maybe I'll go talk to these modeling agents. It was the number one in Toronto because they had just won the supermodel of the world. So I knew that they
Mhm.
were, highfalutin and high profile. So I
Yeah.
went in there and they said, yeah, we'd love to take you, but you're gonna have to take finishing classes because part of their thing was they would have modeling classes where you paid $1,200. So then
Mhm.
this is when I said, well, if you guys really want me, then I'll take the classes because yes, I know I'm rough. I don't know how to put on makeup and I walk like a boy, but I'm not paying any money for the 1,200. I go, you guys can just give it to me for free. And then if I start working, then I'll give you the money. I don't know where the heck that came from, like at 18. And they said, fine, we'll pay for it and you pay for it later. And I was like, okay, great. Because I didn't have the money to pay for it. So I
But the
couldn't pay
power
for
of
it
the
anyway.
ask. Yeah.
So I didn't have the money anyway. So I just said, well, if you guys want me so badly, then I want to make sure this isn't a scam. And
Yeah.
so I did it. And I learned how to walk and I started getting more finesse. And then I just started working like right away. It was like I couldn't believe it. I was working so much your head would spin. Like I
Yeah.
started booking movies, commercials. I was the first Asian person to do a Labatt's beer commercial in Canada.
Oh,
It
wow.
was nuts,
Do you have
huh?
these on VHS?
I do. I do. And yeah, so I just started booking movies and I started booking commercials and I was booking photo shoots and magazines and ads and I couldn't believe. And it was really, so that's when I got lucky because I was able to raise my son, but I wasn't fully single really, because even though we weren't
Mhm.
married, my son's father and parents were, we were still together. And so they were, even though
Mhm.
we didn't live together,
Mhm.
they were still very much. So I didn't, it wasn't a typical, I was isolated. I did have a lot of support, even though we weren't married. So it wasn't really a
Mhm.
typical single parent situation per se. And plus, I was working a lot. So I was earning actually pretty good money.
That's great. And did your mom help out with your baby as well, or did you guys? I mean, it sounds like you were just surrounded by community in the respect that like you had the support of your parents and then the support of your boyfriend and your boyfriend's parents.
My mom basically just tolerated me for 2 years. I think it was just a lot of deep disappointment. And so she allowed me to live at the house, but she didn't
Mhm.
talk to me for 2 years. And I think that was just her process. She didn't know how to, I think she thought she had maybe high hopes for me because I was her, her good little girl, but then who just went off the
Mhm.
rails at 16. So, I mean, I understand that. But yeah, it wasn't always wine and roses. We didn't get along for a long time after that,
Mhm.
for at least 6 years or so. My parents didn't support me, except they did allow me to live in the house. So that's supporting,
Yeah.
but not emotionally.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you. So you're working full time as a model, things are blowing up, you're starting to really like find your stride in this career because Canada is changing the way that the beauty standards in the industry was. So did you kind of have like an end goal or did you just think to yourself like this is what I'm going to do forever?
No, and to this day, 36 years later, I always thought, well, I hit it at the right time in Toronto. Like I really, the time was perfect. And I said, you know what? I'm going to ride this wave because I know it's not going to last. Because everybody knows that, or I thought that, modeling and acting, it's not going to last. So I said, I'm going to milk it for all it's got right now because this is the easiest money I'm ever going to make while raising a child. And it was so
Mhm.
much fun, and the people, it was so creative. So my end goal was to just keep working as much as I could. And then I was going to finish school. So I was actually going to school at University of Toronto to go into medicine. But then
Mhm.
it ended up that work was it just was so busy that I actually dropped out of school to do it full time because
Mhm.
it was just that busy for me. I was like one of
Yeah.
the workingest, girls there at that time. So the career kind of chose me, if that makes any sense.
Did you enjoy it?
I love it. Love every second of it, every moment of it. It's so much fun. I had such a good time with it. Yeah. But I was really lucky. I was I think also I have a really good instinct for
Mhm.
people. So I was able to circumvent, the I guess the darker side of it, but because I
Mhm.
always seem to gravitate towards people who are good, upstanding people, and I didn't have the. I mean, I was put in some precarious situations, but I was able to handle it. I was never,
Yeah.
there was nothing. It was always an amazing experience for me.
I get the sense that you really had already established this very strong sense of self early on because you had so many hurdles to step over early on so that by the time that you'd moved to the second neighborhood and then, gotten pregnant and then started working, at this point in your journey, I have a hard time believing anyone could mess with you because you just have that sense of intuition of, what direction was going to serve you and what wasn't.
Yeah, because I'd already seen like a lot of bad stuff
Mhm.
up until that point. And then when I had my son, that was the best thing that ever happened to me because he was the best thing because it really allowed me to focus on what was important. And that's when it instilled to me that quality time and, family and raising my son was a very important thing to me. And again, I am cognizant of the fact that I was very lucky to have been able to spend time with my son and not have financial problems because my career
Mhm.
took off so quickly. I had no idea that it was going to do that. So I was very lucky in that sense. I didn't have to struggle financially. So I was able
Yeah.
to raise him pretty much with ease and travel
That's
the world with him.
That's amazing. Did he come with you to modeling shoots and gigs?
Heck yeah. That's why it's so funny because he was always there, and just from osmosis, one time a photographer booked. I actually we would work together too. He did a lot of shoots,
Mhm.
so it was so funny because I guess he'd been watching me so much that he knew how to move in front of the camera at such a young age that the photographer was cracking up. And I go, "Oh my gosh, he actually knows how to move because he's been watching me since he was a baby."
That's so
So we actually,
funny.
yeah, it was really like I didn't even think that he was a little sponge watching it.
Oh, of
Um,
course, and he's also incredibly intelligent. I mean, our listeners have no idea of this, but Jordan, Joanna's first son, and I became pen pals at like 9 and 10. And he I was not as cool as Jordan was, so he was like I was like the annoying little sister that he did not want to write to. But he's now since become so successful as a celebrity chef and he has his own show on Netflix and stuff, and I can totally see that he picked up a lot of his chops from you.
Uh, well, he learned how to cook from his dad, and you've always been cool,
Yeah.
honey. So I don't know, and he was never annoyed at you. He loved. He has a yeah. He's very you're very endearing and amazing, and super smart as well. But yeah, no, his dad definitely. We both influenced him
Mhm.
in how he is today because his dad is a really good chef,
Really?
amazing cook. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so I think again he also got lucky because they were looking for chefs that were also of color, but he had just happened
Mhm.
to have had this experience from working with his dad in the kitchen from when he was 9 years old, and then he also had the experience of my side, and then you put that together, and
Yeah.
he was perfect for the camera, and he could cook, and he went to school,
Yeah.
so he had good timing too. Like he got lucky as well,
Yeah.
like his mom did, for the timing wise.
Yeah. It's incredible. So you transitioned at some point into acting, into, you got fully immersed, which is, actually how we met.
Oh yes,
But yeah,
that's right.
what was it like transitioning through the industry and how did you make the leap from modeling and, being a mom to film and television and then to where you are today, which is, you're fully immersed in your art career?
Everything in my life I feel has always just kind of just built upon the next one, and sometimes it happens simultaneously. It was never like, oh, okay, now I'm going to do this. It was always,
Hmm.
so when I started modeling, I started doing commercials, and then I started doing movies all at the same time, so I was doing all those things. And then the tipping point for the acting was I was getting so much work acting in Toronto, but at that time Canadians were not getting paid as much as the US, my US counterparts. And I noticed that they would fly in a girl from New York. We would do the same, what do you call it? The same role in the sense that it was, we had
Hmm.
the same exposure, but she was getting paid $6,000 and I was getting paid $600 because I was Canadian. So this is, 28 years ago, and it's changed since then obviously, but and I remember saying, why is she getting paid 6,000 just because she's American and I'm here
Hmm.
and I'm getting paid $600? And I noticed that all the directors that were hiring me were from either LA or New York, but I was in Canada. And then again, the US part, I mean my modeling side, for some reason a modeling agency in New York found me. I don't know how they found me in Canada, and then they called me over there. So I got my papers through my modeling agency, which gave me the confidence to say, you know what, I'm going to move to the States for acting as well, because then I can really capitalize on the rates. So you see,
Yeah.
it was always, it was simultaneous, and then kind of, and the other one helped the other, and it built upon that. And that's how it's always been for me. So I was a single mother, started modeling at the same time because they were scouting me while I was pregnant, and then I got modeling, then I was modeling and acting. So that's when I said, you know what, I'm moving to Hollywood, because if I can get all this work in Toronto, I'm going to move straight to Hollywood while I'm still young. At this point, I was 27, because I don't have much time and I have all this credentials. So when I go to LA, I'm not brand new. I already have all these credentials from Canada, which is the
Hmm.
Hollywood, Toronto's the Hollywood of the North. And then I
Hmm.
moved to Los Angeles, and that's when I think I planned it really well too, because I had enough money to live for 1 year in Toronto. I mean, in Manhattan Beach, so
Hmm.
that I wasn't stressed out, because you can't really be stressed out when you have your son. So I had a
Yeah.
different, perspective. I couldn't just go wait tables because I had somebody who had to take care of this child. And unbeknownst to me, I moved to an amazing place that had amazing schools that you didn't have to go to pay for private school because I couldn't have afforded that. But how was I supposed
Yeah.
again, luck has really, I didn't know that. So I moved to Manhattan Beach. Great school systems, free, great
Yeah.
neighborhood, near surfing. And at that time, free after school care for a
Oh,
single mother.
really?
Yes, I could not. I was like, so everything was just always, it would just fall into place. And I don't know. I said, what did I do to deserve this? So I moved to, and then I didn't work like I worked right off the bat. My first job was with Will Smith on a music video, and that was at the height of his career, Fresh Prince Bel Air. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh! And then I didn't work for like 6 months, so it wasn't as steady as in Toronto. In Toronto, I was working like 5, 6 shoots a day every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Here, I was like, oh, okay, I haven't worked in 3 months, but I had money saved, and then
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
booked sporadic, and then it just started building from there. I never worked as much as I did in Toronto. But again, the rates are different. So you don't need to
Yeah.
work as you would need to over there because,
Yeah.
it's more lucrative in Hollywood.
When you moved out here, did you have any type of support system or any family or anyone that you knew? Like why Manhattan Beach?
Oh, I did have a great support system because my aunts on my mom's side and my cousins all lived here in Orange County, Anaheim,
Mm-hmm.
and Santa Ana. So what I did was I said, let me check out Hollywood. I'm going to move. So my aunts had big houses. So I would go and stay with them. And then I just started
Mm-hmm.
exploring, okay, what is the best in terms of school and logistics. And because I was still working in Canada a little bit to, just to supplement my income, I said, I want to live 10 minutes from the airport. So then, so actually, no, number one, I did it. I said, number one, let me drive around. And then here's my 3 criteria. Number one, where are the best schools that I don't have to pay? So it was Pasadena, Santa Monica, Manhattan Beach at that time. So then
Mm-hmm.
the second one was, where can I go surfing? So Santa Monica, so Pasadena's out, Santa Monica, and Manhattan Beach. Santa Monica at that time was rent controlled, so that you couldn't really get a
Mm-hmm.
lot of places. So I went to Manhattan Beach, not knowing how expensive Manhattan Beach was, and I just started
Yeah.
driving. I said, "Oh, this place has a really good vibe." And then, as luck would have it, I saw a little sign in a door, and it said "for rent," and my rent was $700 a month, and near the school because everything else was $1,200. I could not afford $1,200
Yeah.
US at that time,
Yeah.
because I had the exchange for my Canadian money. So $700 was perfect for me, and so I moved into Manhattan Beach, and that's how I was able to. And he was going to these great schools and with a free childcare. So everything kind of. So there's a little bit of planning, but then those are how that was my criteria of moving to Manhattan Beach.
I feel like you are very, very resourceful. So I know you keep saying it's like been all dependent on luck and a little bit of planning and then, this idea of like what did you do to deserve this? But what I hear from your entire story is that through every trial that you've kind of gone through, you one absorbed the lesson, but two, you just kind of internalized it and then utilized it as the stepping stone for the next thing. So even though you haven't necessarily planned your career so strictly, like some people, they have an idea in their head, I'm going to be a doctor, so I'm going to go from step A to step B to step C to step D and eventually graduate. You had this flexibility about you while still being able to do the work. So instead of just flying here and not knowing, like you had a support system, but you drove around yourself and looked for the places. So I can hear a lot of resilience and a lot of resourcefulness in all of this.
Definitely, but I have to say, I've been really lucky. And my grandmother, I remember we were talking before she passed away, and I remember she said, "Yeah, it was because she was widowed while she was 3 months pregnant with my aunt with how many daughters? 5 daughters." And
Oh my gosh.
she said, "Yeah, so she had 5 daughters, and she was widowed, and this is back in the day." And she said she got lucky as well. So I think I kind of no, and I understand. Like, yes, I'm very resourceful, but there has been a lot of luck, and I really can't discount that because, I mean, how did I know to go to Manhattan? Like, I didn't know Manhattan Beach was a good place. I just said I want to go somewhere
Mm-hmm.
with good schools and then surfing. Those are my criteria.
Mm-hmm.
How did I know? I didn't know that they were going to have free childcare. I mean, those
Mm-hmm.
are the things that would just kind of, and
Yeah.
how did I start modeling? That they were at the time that I was got pregnant, that they were going to start looking for my look. I mean, there's
Mm-hmm.
no resourcefulness that could have planned all that timing. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to discount what I've done, but
Yeah.
I mean
No,
that's
but I
luck.
you know how to follow the green lights too. I mean, these things are popping up and it's maybe some would call it luck, but I think that you have just sort of an innate understanding of, how to flow with the way that life is presenting itself to you. You
Yeah, I'm
didn't
very
like just
grateful.
you didn't crumple. You didn't crumple and put your head down or bury your head in the sand like with any of your challenges, like not with being bullied and not with, your parents having a tumultuous experience at home for a while. It seems like you've taken everything really at its stride, and it's pretty incredible to hear it all laid out.
I'm always excited about whatever anything is happening. So it's like my perspective is the opposite of depression. It's almost manic,
Hmm.
I guess. Like so, I'm always excited for that. Like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? Like even if it's bad, I'm like, okay, so what else can we do? So so it's the opposite. I always have this. That's just part of my personality. I think I just like to have fun. So I think it
Yeah,
works.
yeah. Yeah,
So
I
that
could
it helps.
definitely see that. At what point did you end up meeting Matt and then having Bronson and Trenton? I mean, I
Oh,
remember
oh,
some of this, but you tell our audience.
so Matt, that one was just a little bit scandalous, but not too much. So I
Hmm.
was with my son's father, and I was emulating, minus the violence, my parents' marriage. So it was very self-destructive, and we were both very mentally and emotionally abusive and verbally abusive to each other, but not never physically, thank God.
Hmm.
Um, and so, of course, I knew this wasn't going to last because we were too young, immature,
Hmm.
emotionally immature. And I had a bad example, and so did he. Actually, he had a better example, but I had a really bad example. So he really didn't have a chance. Sorry, Richard. Um, but, I was young. And so at that time, I also met Matt. And then so it was kind of like he broke up, Jordan's father broke up with me because we were
Hmm.
engaged, and then we tried to work it out. But then in that time, I also met Matt, and I realized, oh, you know what? I don't think this is gonna work. So I'm gonna. Luckily for me, I was able to say, okay, I learned from that experience and not to be self destructive within my relationship, and luckily, I also met the most amazing guy in the whole entire world and universe. So it's kind of hard not to get along with him because I always tell my friends I've been with him for 30 years, and I have
Hmm.
yet to see ugly come out. And I'm not
Really?
lying. Yeah. I've been with him 30 years. Okay. We've been through everything and never had ugly come out. And
Hmm.
also, he's like a puppy. So, in order for me to fight with him, it would be like kicking a puppy. And why would you kick a puppy? You don't, you hug them up. So, I've been hugging up my little Matt puppy for 30 years because he makes it easy. He's the opposite
Yeah.
yeah, I'm very reactive, but he's the opposite. He actually brings out, like in that movie As Good as It Gets, he absolutely brings out the best in me. Like as soon as I
Yeah.
see him, I just get giddy with happiness as opposed to
Yeah.
misery. So it's been amazing. Thank God. Again, I got lucky with Matt. How was I supposed to how did I know I was going to find a guy who's going to make me happy every single day of my life? People say to me, like, you're lying, Joanna. Like, I'm like, ask anybody. Like we've never even come close to getting a divorce or like nothing. It's because I did all that misery stuff. Sorry, with my Jordan's dad. I did put him through the ringer, so I learned my lesson and then treat Matt like
Hmm.
gold.
Matt is gold. He really is a
Well,
wonderful person, and he's got where your energy is very vibrant and energetic and hysterical, like funny hysterical. Matt is, all of those things, but in the exact counterpart way. Like it's just you guys are total yin and yang where he's like you're like fire and he's like water, like that movie Elemental.
yeah, he's very calm,
Yeah.
but he's also the biggest
Mhm.
smartass. So he always cracks me up. As you, so funny. Like he always
Yeah.
makes me laugh. I love him so much.
This makes me so happy.
I love him so much.
Oh, oh my goodness. So at a certain point, you had two more kids and you're still working, doing film, living in Manhattan Beach. Matt's also like a full-time male model. And like, I remember, especially, God, like, I guess it's been like 25 or 30 years that I've known you. But I remember turning on the TV sometimes and being like, "Oh my God, it's Auntie Jo and Matt and the kids like on a Target commercial." Or like
Yeah.
there's Uncle Matt like on a what's that vitamin store that's really popular, like the GMC stores. And I'd be
Oh
walking
yeah.
through the mall with my friends and I'd be like, "Hey, I know that guy."
Yeah, he was very successful. He was very successful as a model. So work has slowed down for both of us now because we're, in our 50s. So, which is fine. But yeah, he was very successful, and now he's starting his own supplement brand that they're launching very soon. He also does some insurance work, and he still does modeling and acting. So he's doing a little bit of behind the scenes on set too. He's doing some background stuff. So I think in this business, it really helps. People say this, they tie their ego or their sense of self to it. But
Hmm.
we've never done that. I've always looked at modeling, acting as a business, so it's never, oh, I'm only as good as if how much I work. I never, that wasn't my perspective on it because I did it to support my son and afford a lifestyle that I would never have been able to afford had I not been doing this business. So it wasn't about, that this is what makes me amazing because I'm an actress. I go, no, I need to make
Hmm.
money and I'm going to be efficient about it because I always believed, I never really bought into this is probably a bad thing for people to say, but my mom didn't understand it. I always said that I believe in making your money work for you instead of you working for your money. And
Hmm.
people, my mom always like they didn't obviously they didn't understand that because I always had this mentality. But quality of life and time is so short that I knew right off the bat from the beginning that I didn't want to work myself. And you know what? That sounds really privileged because I was very lucky to be able to not say that. So I'm acknowledging that I was lucky to be able to do this business where I didn't have to work as hard and
Hmm.
struggle.
Yeah, I think that you have always created opportunities for yourself. Again, I know you say luck plays into it, but you really have put in the work in all of these different scenarios. There could have
Yes.
been many, many moments where you could have gone a completely different route, but instead,
Hmm.
it sounds like you really chose authenticity and joy, and like you said, figuring out a way to make your money work for you, figuring out a way to make ends meet without struggling. And
Hmm.
that takes work, even if it's not the same physical labor that some people would consider, a lot of work to organize your life in such a way that you can really enjoy it.
Hmm. I think a lot of it too also has to do with I have a lot of varied interests, and I believe that life is very short, so I just go for it because I
Yeah.
always believe, and it's so cliche, but it's so true. You only miss, what is it called? You only miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And to
Yeah.
me, there's no such thing as failure. I don't look at anything as failure. Even when I see, let's say I'll go to a short film and you'll see a really, really bad short film. But you know what? I don't care how bad the short film is because that person wrote it, took the time to make it, fund it, and guess what? It's showing. They're not sitting at
Yeah.
home talking fluff saying, "Oh, I'm going to do this," but they didn't. So I don't care if it turned
Hmm.
out bad or good. The person did it. So to me, there's no
Yeah.
such thing as failure. And that's how I always looked at life is, create opportunities, pivot when you need to, because when Matt and I got married, he and I were both working so much, like both of us just working, working, working. And then of course I got pregnant because we wanted to have kids. And that's where I met your dad on the set of Snow
Yeah.
Dogs. He was the first AD in Canada.
Yes.
So we went,
Yes.
yeah, and that's how I met your family, and that's how I met you, and we became friends, right? But I think the pivoting is important, and also to just create opportunities, because when I got pregnant, obviously my work dropped off, and there was actually 2 lean years where I think I booked 4 jobs in 2 years. And I had a hard time with that because, again, I'm very hyper independent, and I didn't want to rely on my husband for him
Hmm.
to take care of me. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that for women, but for me, it was important for me to not rely on him. I didn't want him to be the major. So I had to struggle with that. And I was a
Hmm.
little bit resentful inside, but then I said, you know what, Joanna, it's okay. He's your partner, and luckily Matt is a full-on partner. And so I was able to, but even then I couldn't sit still. So then I started my photography business. So I was
Hmm.
shooting up until I was 8.5 months pregnant. So I started calling all these agencies saying, hey, I'm going to be shooting headshots. And so I was always keeping busy even when I was pregnant, even though I wasn't working in front of the camera. And that's when I started transitioning behind the camera. I started doing
Hmm.
photography, and then shortly after that I started doing directing and then producing. And then I got these clients, the tech clients up in, again, it's just that involvement of and pivoting of, depending on my situation, I had to adjust my, and again, because I didn't have an ego tied to the business. Actually, that's a lie. I think my ego took a little bit of a hit because I was like, how come I'm not working anymore? And then that took about 4 6 months. And then I went, okay, fine, whatever. Let him earn the money. And then I'll just earn
Yeah.
money this way.
Yeah. I just want to make a little note that one of the things that I think was pretty formative for me was that when my dad was working on Snow Dogs and we met you for the first time, we used to travel with my dad and we'd stay, 3 months at a time. The whole family, my mom, the kids, and I would stay for like 3 months in a different city for like at least 2, 3 years. There was like 2 to 3 years that were really, really busy where we were just pulled out of school and doing school on set. Canada and Snow Dogs happened to be one of those times. And, it gets kind of lonely because you're never around the same people or the same kids. And my
Mm.
mom was also, used to being like the sole Filipina in many of the neighborhoods and places we were in. So I remember my dad saying, Viv, I really want to introduce you to somebody. She's also Filipina. I think you guys are going to hit it off great. And then you did. And then I remember thinking, I don't know if we were on set, but I remember watching the film and everything and just thinking, wow, this is the first time I'm seeing like a brown woman, like a beautiful brown woman being represented on the screen as the main love interest in any movie ever. And for me, that was pretty formative because I personally was in a lot of situations where I didn't have, examples like in film, media, television, radio, whatever. Like,
Yes.
that looked like me or that I could see myself in those roles. So that I just wanted to tell you that because it was a very cool thing at the time to experience and even still. And I always get a kick out of turning on the TV or, opening up a magazine and seeing like you or Matt or the kids or even Jordan, doing his thing because representation is so impactful even today, especially for me at that age, but even today, it feels so good. It feels so good and it feels nice to be seen.
It's so funny because I understand what you're saying, because I never even thought of it from that angle. I was just surviving, and
Yeah.
so I'm glad that, yeah, because now I'm like, oh, I guess it is. It's very important, and I'm glad that it's opened up a lot since then.
Tell us a little bit more. We're running out of time, but I get the privilege of speaking to you anytime, but I want to share with the audience a little bit more about your documentary that's about to come out about your brother, your short film, and then also your fine art gallery that you just opened.
So mental illness
Hmm.
is very much a part of the fabric of our being. It runs in our family. My brother suffers from it. He was homeless for a while, and there was an incident where he had an altercation with the police in Toronto, and they brutalized him. But because he wasn't on his meds, he was homeless, because he wanted to be independent. And so people were calling us saying, why is Rex on the streets? And I said, listen, my mom offered to buy him a house. I said he could live with me in LA. I mean, you can't tie the guy up, when they're
Hmm.
mentally ill. You can't force them to take medication. So I said, we're there for him, but he doesn't want to have anything to do with us. So of course he's living on the streets in Toronto, and he gets into this altercation, and he was hospitalized, which was actually a blessing in disguise,
Mhm.
and because of the police brutality at that time and attitude. Well, I don't know if it's at that time towards people who are mentally ill. Um, and I just wanted to tell that side of the story with with my brother, and I wrote it a long time ago, and then I don't know why I just said, you know what, I'm going to finally just film this thing, and I produced it, funded it, wrote it, directed it, got everything together, and my brother is starring in it, playing himself, and he did such a good job. And I was able to get one of the top actors who actually was with me on Snow Dogs, Graham Greene. He's an Oscar-nominated actor. He agreed to be in the movie, and so now we won. We didn't get into the big ones, which I'm really disappointed about, but we did win Best Producing, and I got nominated for the LA Independent Women's Film Festival, and so it's in the process of hopefully getting sold right now. So that's my producer is working on that, my co-producer. And so I'm glad that I was able to tell the story from the lens of a Filipino immigrant, and then dealing with my brother who has mental illness. So I think it's an interesting viewpoint about mental illness and police brutality, and what he was going through from his perspective. And I think it's an important story to tell. So I hope to get that sold in the next. I think they said they were interested. So cross our fingers, everything falls into
Yes,
place. But I will have a
I'm
screening.
I'm very, very excited to see that. Really
Yeah, you'll be.
excited. And then tell us a little bit about your art.
Oh, so my other brother is an amazing artist, my youngest brother, Sonny. And he is the one who is the artist in the family because when he was young, people would draw, they'd draw from the top to the bottom. He would draw from the middle of the page. And I'm like, what is he drawing? And then it would be in 3D, a person pointing and coming out of the page. That's how he would
Mhm.
draw, like in full perspective. So
Wow.
he was able to get into, yeah, he was amazing. He's still amazing. And he's done some amazing murals in Toronto, um, like huge ones, with two other guys. And so I always thought, oh well, Sunny's the artist because I don't know how to draw really, but I feel like I have a good eye. And but I had a teacher in high school who introduced me to pop art, and I remember. So it was my brother, and then pop art in high school, and I said, "Oh my God, I love Warhol and Roy Lichtenstein." And I go, I'm never going to be able to do that. I want to collect that when I'm older. That was 16. And then I moved to to LA, and I started volunteering for the hands-on art, young at art, to teach my kids in their classes. Because then I would be with the kids and I'm teaching them art. So art has always been a big part of my life. And so I would volunteer. I even volunteered in Compton, inner city, special ed kid. Like I love doing that, teaching art. So I did that for about 20 years. And then during the school. And then in that time, my husband and I, Matt, your uncle Matt, and I started collecting art as well. 20, I think it's been 26 years now. And the rule of thumb is um, if you do your investments like real estate and Roth, IRA, and all that stuff, then if you have extra, then you can start investing in art. And the rule of thumb is to try to get a piece one a year. And so that was our tenet for collecting. So some years we would collect more, and sometimes there would be 4 years where we didn't collect anything. So
Mhm.
but eventually our collection built up, and then I would drag my family to 4 to 6 art shows a week. That's last week we went to 8 in 4 hours. That was a little much actually. um, and then I became an artist in 2015. So it kind of, yeah, again, you see everything always
Yeah.
stacks up, like the acting. So my brother, and then this, and then I became an artist, and then being an artist, I started getting these murals locally, and then the local people started collecting my art, and then now I said, you know what, I want to open up an art gallery. So I was
Eh,
looking for 2 years, and then my father unfortunately got sick and passed away, so I had to shelve it. And then in October of last year, I said, okay, let's do this. And I had a really hard time looking for a place that suited my budget and my my needs. I looked everywhere: downtown, Culver City, Pacific Palisades, Venice, Lawndale, Hawthorne, and then I went full circle and I found a spot in Manhattan Beach, 2 minutes from my house, and we had an opening. Yeah, I was like, it actually makes sense because all my collectors are here. The
Mhm.
community already is very supportive of my career. This is where I started, so it actually kind of made sense. And
Yeah.
yeah, it made perfect sense. And I didn't, but I was fighting it. I don't know why. I thought it would be better over there. I don't know. But so now I found a spot, and we had our grand opening on Saturday, and it was a success. I got, local press covered it, and I didn't sell anything that night, but we did sell something the next day online, and then have a few people asking for some commissions. So I'm going to be there for 2 years, and now I'm a gallery owner slash artist slash art collector, former single mother. It's been a long
Yeah.
journey, baby.
You missed out on there's like 10 other things you could have put in there.
Yeah, yeah. It's been a good journey. I think being grateful and taking opportunity, pivoting, not letting your ego get in the way, and just having fun with life and not be afraid to just take chances. Because and obviously my risks and my what I do are very calculated risks. Like, for
Mhm.
example, when I did this art gallery, everything is always, what's the worst case scenario and how can I
Mhm.
mitigate it, and if the worst case scenario, can I handle it or should I cut it loose? So I do have that. It's not just a free for all. There is a strategy to it.
Mhm.
So, okay, what's the worst case scenario if I go through with this?
Mhm.
And then you just make sure that your worst case scenario is palatable, that you can handle it, that you're not going to you know, go crazy or bankrupt or whatever, and then everything is fine. And I think that's the approach to life.
It makes me so happy to hear that you found so much success with this outlook because Asha is the exact opposite. And
Oh,
I
really?
actually tend to think about things. This is why we work so well together. And we were recently talking about this that she tends to be a very positive person with a very structured plan. And
Okay.
so she struggles when things don't go according to plan. Whereas I usually will just be like, okay, well, what's the worst that can happen? And then I'll go through the algorithm. So when something goes wrong, I'm usually the one saying, "This is great. We can figure it out because I already know what the worst case scenario is. So we can do this." And
Exactly.
so vice
Right?
versa. She keeps me even keeled where I'm not always, I wouldn't say I'm pessimistic, but am thinking things through constantly like the same way that you are. So I'm so happy to hear that you've had so much success.
Yeah, it works because then you're not stressing out over it because you already know what the worst
Yeah.
case scenario is. You already said, okay, I can deal with it.
Before we wrap things up, we do something fun called the Fast Five, where I ask you five quick questions, quick answers, and then we end with a closing question that we ask all of our guests. So if you're ready to do that, we can jump right into it.
Cool. Let's do it.
Okay. Number one, when do you slow down?
Oh, at night at 10 o'clock.
Okay. Number two, favorite song to dance it out to right now. I say right now because
Dance
I know you
hall
love
reggae.
music.
Dance hall reggae. Any dance hall reggae. Any
Okay.
dance hall for
Number
sure.
three, one thing you couldn't live without.
Art.
Number four, daily non-negotiable.
Quality time with my husband.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Number five, one mantra to keep things moving.
Just live in gratitude, and there's no such thing as failure.
Yeah, I love those. I love those so much. So, the final question that we ask all of our guests is what was one quality you had as a teen or a young woman that you might not have taken pride in or recognized at the time, but you look back at it now and you say you really appreciate it?
Oh, 100% being headstrong. Because he got me into a lot of trouble. Headstrong and outspoken. and opinionated. But since then, I've learned to be more tactful. I wasn't very tactful. I was all those things without the tact. So now I'm
Yeah.
all those things, but more tactful. So
Yeah.
that's it's better.
I love hearing the journey, all of your adventures, how even your headstrong behaviors got you into all of the right rooms and all of the right places. Even if sometimes it wasn't meant to be Manhattan Beach, but it ended up right back in Manhattan Beach.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah. So, where can our listeners find you? Where can they seek you out on social media or find your gallery information?
Yeah, so it's at Garel Fine Art, Garel Fine Art. So that's the new art gallery, and then I also have my that's for Instagram, by the way. And then Joanna at the Joanna Bacalso on Instagram. That's just like for regular fun stuff. And the art gallery is at 1069 North Aviation Boulevard in Manhattan Beach, California. And we're open Tuesdays to Saturdays, 11 to 5. Drop on by.
It's amazing. I can't wait to come by. I can't wait to see it in person.
I
Well,
can't wait
I love
to.
you so much. Thank you for
Love
this.
you, honey.
I'm so excited for our listeners to hear this, and there's so many incredible takeaways from your story. So thank you.
Thank you, Keish. Hugs from here.